It is a great day to be alive, and I am so thankful for God, Jesus Christ, who lives in us. Today's video is titled, What's Next for Tuttle Capital, Bonk and XRP ETF? We're going back, taking a look at July 16th, 2025, which was supposed to be the earliest launch date for the Bonk ETF, the XRP ETFs, and a few other ETFs that was under Tuttle Capital. Before we get started, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing that I'm sharing is financial advice. I'm simply sharing dreams, visions, and interpretations that I feel God has given me as it relates to crypto. Now, let's get into the video. So I want to start by sharing here the older video where I shared my Bonk Dream. So if you want to go back and check out that dream in its entirety, that is the video to go back and check out. But what I want to do is take a look first at the key takeaways from this dream. Things that I shared in that video, things that I overlooked, did not share simply because of how the pieces were coming together and dates were lining up. If you haven't seen that video, a little bit of a spoiler alert as far as the dates and how the dates lined up, but let's get into it. So here are the key takeaways. In that dream, I saw my husband. He was wearing some weird wide jeans. He had his foot out, leg out in front of him slightly, like almost in a posing way. He had his right hand on top of his head, and he said to me, Bonk. And as I woke up, I heard quickly, bye quickly. So for my list of takeaways, I shared about my husband. My husband's birthday is July the 1st. Two things to make a note of about July 1st. That is when the Bonk token began to take off, as well as an article that gave the details about what ETFs would be launched on the day of July 16th. So July 1st, Bonk began to take off. Next, I shared that he had his right hand on top of his head and he said to me, Bonk. The message that I received from that is that Bonk is headed right to the top. I shared that we never considered buying Bonk until after having this dream. And then I began to look into what is going on with Bonk. Why is Bonk moving so much starting on July 1st? Based on what I found, Tuttle Capital was talking about launching these ETFs on July 16th. So here we have the launch date as early as July 16th. And here again, I have simply circled XRP and Bonk, although there were other crypto coins. These are the two that God has been dealing with me with as far as sharing dreams. But I also shared in that last video that when I saw Tuttle, it reminded me of turtle. And immediately I thought about two turtle dreams that I had. The first turtle dream I had on July 16th, 2023. And in that dream, I was prophesied to. Someone told me that God said, that thing that has been moving slow, I am about to speed up. And at the end of that dream, there was something that reminded me of a turtle, something that happened at the end of that dream. Dream number two, I had on July 7th, 2024. For me, this was more like a timeline because in that dream, I saw a turtle. And in that dream, I saw my mom cleaning, sweeping up around me. And so I'm calling this a timeline simply because in April, after I had my son, my mom came. She was cleaning, doing her mama thing. And this was in the month of April, 2025, this year. And so here I shared the similarities. Tuttle sounds like turtle. Remind me of my two turtle dreams. One turtle dream I had on July 16th, 2023, which was the exact same date that Tuttle was supposed to, or potentially the earliest date of launching these ETFs. Well, July 16 rolled around. No Bonk ETF was launched. None of them were launched. This brings us to what is new. I decided to go back and revisit this dream. Let's look at what was shared, what was not, and let's take it from there. So I've highlighted here in orange those things that were talked about. My husband's birthday and what we saw on July 1st happening to Bonk. Him having his right hand on top of his head saying Bonk and the significance and message behind that. But now let's take a look a little deeper at that dream. He was wearing these jeans, these weird looking jeans that he would normally not wear. His leg was out in front of him, almost like as if he was posing slightly. And then I heard the words quickly, bye quickly whenever I was waking up. So I was sitting there staring at what was left as far as the key takeaways from this dream. And I'm like, Lord, that's not a whole lot to go off on. So I'm going to have to do a really random search. And so I did. I began to Google Bonk jeans. And when I Googled Bonk jeans, to my surprise, there is such a thing. And I'm going through, I'm looking at these jeans, and they're wide leg jeans. And this is some type of Instagram group where they are advertising different types of Bonk clothing. And Bonk jeans happen to be one of those items. It was here where God began to reveal to me a lot of things. In this post, the person had the words, hurry up. You want to buy something. They want you to buy something quickly. And that reminded me of what I heard as I was waking up. And again, a description of these jeans. These jeans are loose fitted. They have the men and the women. So that fits the description of what I saw him wearing in the dream. And they're modeling or posing with these Bonk clothing items. And so that checks off that portion of the dream as well. So all the remaining key takeaways have been checked off based on this one post alone. So then I began to look at the Bonk sign behind this individual, and I see yellow and red. I've shared the different indicators for yellow and red and how that falls under the category for the date of October 17th. And although yellow and red represents something to do with the market crash or some type of collapse, there's also a portion for yellow and red when it comes down to me deriving dates for a timeline. And that's what we want to focus on here. April the 7th, the date that this post was put out, well, there was a global market sell-off due to tariffs. And as a result, Japan experienced a circuit breaker because of carry trades. And it says here, the crash was a part of a broader global market sell-off sparked by renewed trade war fears following an announcement of tariffs by the U.S. President Donald Trump. So this is specifically talking about the Japan circuit breaker that took place on April the 7th. Here again, yellow and red representing a crash. So that's the crash portion of yellow and red. But now I'm looking to at a timeline, deriving a date. So what I did was I went back, I added together my yellow and red, and that totaled out to be 100 days. I added those 100 days to April the 7th, the date that this post was put out. And to my surprise, I derived the date of July 16th. And this date was derived based on the research, a random search for Bonk jeans. What I have now is this date of July 16th for Tuttle Capital ETFs, where Bonk and XRP was listed as 2 out of the 10 coins. That potential date was as early as July 16th. My Turtle Dream, the first one, happened on July 16th, 2023. And now, based on this random search for something to do with Bonk and Bonk jeans, I have derived a date based on the day that this post was put out of July 16th, 2025. I don't think that any of this is a coincidence. And this brings me to this diagram. If you guys have followed me for any amount of time, you've seen this diagram before. In the red square, I have what represents Bonk because of that red and yellow design behind that individual. And because I use yellow and red and those numbers that correspond to come up with this date of July 16th for Bonk, the yellow and red represents Bonk in this diagram. The 2 blues represents XRP. This is something that I've shared across the board. You've heard this probably over and over again till you're probably tired of hearing it. But XRP is represented by these 2 blue eggs, 40 and 40. Putting it together, XRP is going to represent 80 days. And what I did finally was, starting with that Bonk derived date of July 16th, I added those 80 XRP days, and I got the date of October 4th, 2025. So that's moving us away from this pattern of July 16th. And now we're looking at October 4th. I don't think this is far-fetched simply because I know that a lot of ETFs have been moved from the month of August and have been pushed back until the month of October. So this is what I have now, and this is all concluded from the remainder of that dream. Those things that I overlooked, didn't think they were that important, but obviously they were, but it's just timing. And so I know God's timing is always perfect. He reveals and opens our eyes to see things at certain times. And with this, he's piggybacking on that July 16th date and moving us forward to seeing an October 4th date. So from this point forward, I'm looking again to hear more about this Bonk and XRP ETF based on Tuttle Capital on October 4th, 2025. Again, that July 16th date for that Bonk ETF launch was the earliest that they would be able to do that. So let's continue to pray about this October 4th date. If there's anything that changes with that or anything more that God reveals through this dream, I will definitely get back on here and share that. But while we're on the topic of XRP, I want to share this upcoming video that has to do with XRP and the colors of yellow and red. So now, again, following the same yellow and red, looking at this diagram of those 4 eggs, 2 blues, 1 yellow, 1 red, I want to follow up this video with this particular one about XRP. It's titled XRP, MasterCard, and Yellow and Red Revealed. So that is all that I have for this video. Until the next one, God bless.